Hey everybody, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to a very special edition of the Watchman Newscast, and welcome to Jerusalem. I just arrived in God's city, in God's land, and I can't think of a better person to kick off my week-long Watchman production with than the one and only Chris Mitchell of CBN News. Hey, brother.
Erick, great to be with you.
Hey, great to be with you as always. Host of Jerusalem Dateline, of course, and Middle East Bureau Chief for CBN News. My longtime dear friend. Hey, man, we have so much to talk about.
It's the Middle East. There's so much to talk about.
The Middle East never sleeps, and Chris lives here in Jerusalem. We've been here 22 years now.
21, almost coming up on 22.
Coming up on 22. Well, I can't think of a better person to talk to about what's going on in this crazy region right now, but I'm going to take it first a little more north of here to Russia.
Yeah.
We're hearing obviously about a potential Russian invasion of Ukraine. Could be any day now, apparently. But what is Russia doing here? In your backyard, right here in the backyard of Israel, in Syria in particular.
Right. Well,
and why should Israel be concerned?
Oh, Israel's very concerned, and you know, right now, as you say, it's a little further north. Russian troops, well over 100,000, right on the border, looking to invade into Ukraine, maybe any hour. I mean, they're already penetrating, it seems, right now. But Russia really has a footprint here in the Middle East, and most especially in Syria. And the reason that's so important for Israel is that for years, Israel has been fighting a battle against Iran. Iran trying to make this land bridge all the way from Tehran to Lebanon, and Syria is a big part of that. So they have been bringing in militias from around the Middle East. They're bringing in Hezbollah, they're bringing in weapons, and it's also a conduit for these weapons to go to Hezbollah in Lebanon. So Israel has been fighting these air raids, hundreds of them, trying to penetrate, trying to defeat this policy by Iran. It's really like almost a forward base against Israel. And Russia has been letting them do that for years. And now there's a sense that maybe Russia's not too friendly towards this kind of policy. And will they stop Israel from doing these preemptive strikes against Iran? Very serious for Israel.
Yeah, there's got to be concern here in Jerusalem, you would think, among the Israeli government, Chris. Israel has had that freedom to operate in Syria.
And we were with the IDF not too long ago, where they talked about preparing for a war with Hezbollah. But they were making the point, it wasn't going to be the third Lebanon war. The first one was in 1982, the second one was in 2006. The third one, they say, is going to be a Northern Front war, because they're not going to fight Hezbollah just in Lebanon, but they're going to fight Hezbollah and these Iranian militias inside Syria. So this represents a strategic, very, very serious threat to Israel on its northern border.
Yeah, we've talked about it here in the newscast, Chris. We've called it the coming Great Northern War, and I think it is coming indeed. Hey, before the interview, we were talking a bit about the Afghanistan Effect. And Putin, very bold right now, obviously, in Ukraine and right here in the Middle East. Iran on the march, as you just laid out. China and North Korea firing off missiles. Tell us more about that Afghanistan Effect and why it had such a ripple effect for the world's worst actors to see the debacle in Afghanistan.
Exactly. So it made such a difference here in Israel and in the region and around the world. I've talked to Israeli leaders who say, you know, when the U.S. is strong, Israel is strong. When the U.S. is weak, that makes Israel a bit weaker because they need the U.S. support. So when people saw the U.S. pull out of Afghanistan in such a disastrous way, it was a debacle, and it was embarrassing sometimes for Americans. It showed this weakness against the Taliban, a superpower, being almost seemingly kicked out of Afghanistan. Now, we were talking too about a political cartoon I saw at that time. So in this cartoon, you see a restaurant, Putin sitting at one table, Xi's sitting at another table. On Putin's menu is Ukraine, on Xi's menu is Taiwan, and Joe Biden, the president, is the waiter. And so it just seems like all the dictators, all these bad actors were looking and watching to see what was happening in Afghanistan, and not to mention Iran. Iran now in nuclear talks with the U.S., and it seems like the U.S. is more eager than ever to concede and make concessions for Iran and maybe pave once again their pathway to a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, Chris, I wanted to ask you about that. You're obviously here in Jerusalem. You're talking to Israeli officials, leaders on a regular basis. What is the sense here right now? It looks like we are very close to seeing that disastrous Iran nuclear deal revived.
Yeah.
And they're pushing forward with this in Vienna right now.
They are. And I was just reading an article last night. It looks like they're expecting perhaps this week or in 2 weeks, signing a deal which would lift sanctions off Iran. What the Trump administration did, as you know, was this maximum pressure campaign, severe economic sanctions, which was really strangling their economy and putting them on the ropes. When the Biden administration came in, they started either lifting sanctions or not enforcing sanctions, which sort of threw them in economic livelihood. Now, if they even throw up more sanctions, it's really going to embolden Iran, and they're funding all Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and Hamas in Gaza. This is like funding the terror capitals of the world here in the Middle East.
The head of the snake is in Tehran.
That's right.
The Iranian regime. And you mentioned this proxy, Chris. I call them the proxies. I call them the ring of fire. I want to ask you about one of them, Hezbollah, you referenced. Before I do, folks, just so you know, it is a cold and windy day here in Jerusalem. People think the Middle East, it's so hot. It gets cold here in Jerusalem.
Yeah. And
you heard some of the sounds of Jerusalem behind us as well. You have the call to prayer here several times a day for the Muslims who live here. But go ahead, Chris.
Well, I was gonna say, literally, I just came from a couple hours ago. I was down at Ben Gurion Airport, and there were 85 Jews that came back. They were sponsored by the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. Our good friend Johnny Moore was down there, and now they didn't come on a rescue flight. They had planned to come and make Aliyah, immigrate to Israel. But the sense there was that even though it was a sort of a regular time that they came, it wasn't a regular situation. They know that war could break out at any moment, and it's possible maybe thousands of Jews could come here to Israel just to flee the fighting.
Yeah, and we live in perilous times, but we also live in Bible times.
Right.
To the north, which you mentioned earlier, Chris, Hezbollah these past few days seem to be probing and launching drones along the Israel-Lebanon border. What are your thoughts on that? Are they probing, do you think?
I think it's more probing. These particular drones didn't represent a serious military threat to Israel, but I think probing Israel's defenses, seeing how they're going to react for a bigger strike. And we all know that even though Hassan Nasrallah denied it a couple of weeks ago, I think, we know that if Israel takes a preemptive strike against Iran's nuclear facilities, you could have 150,000 rockets aimed right now at Israel and just firing, thousands per day, perhaps.
Yeah, Chris, great point. You have to think that Iran, if and when Israel strikes those nuclear facilities, to my mind, it becomes a lot more likely if that nuclear deal is signed.
Exactly.
You have to think they would unleash their most lethal proxy, Hezbollah. Hey, last question. You have a new book coming out, which is a great one. Tell us a bit more about it.
Well, you endorsed it.
I did. Gladly and wholeheartedly.
Yeah. All right, the book was called Dearest AJ. The letters that kept love alive in the midst of war. Letters that my dad, his name was Mitch, maybe people call him Mitch, wrote to my mother. Her name was Ann Jean. He used to say Dearest AJ. So he wrote over 70 letters during the war. When my mother passed away in 2002, we found those letters, and so I was able to write a book about not only their love. It was two things. It was like a window into their love story. And I don't know about you, but you don't think of your dad as a romantic guy. Right. He's pouring his heart out
during the war.
During the war. He left in 1943. He arrived back in 1945. So it's a chronicle of their love story and how they're both pouring out their love to each other, and also how it documents his wartime experiences. He landed in North Africa just as that campaign was over, but then he landed on D-Day in Sicily under George S. Patton during that Sicily. Yeah, and he was there on Sicily. He was actually on D-Day. He made a decision where his orders were to go one way when they landed on the beach, but he saw some German counterattack and he decided to go the other way. He ended up in Cortina d'Ampezzo, which is in the Italian Alps. He was the highest-ranking U.S. officer for several weeks after the war, and talking about his experience. And then coming back to AJ, he's on the boat thinking, What is she going to say? Say when she
I said
sees me?
it's like a Hollywood movie. It
Yeah.
really is. You mentioned Saving Private Ryan. I think A Band of Brothers, Flags of Our Fathers.
Yeah.
Where can we find it?
Amazon.com.
Amazon.com, Dearest AJ.
Dearest AJ.
Amazon.com, Dearest AJ, and Jerusalem Dateline.
Yeah.
Every week on Daystar and other great Christian
That's
networks.
right, that's
CBN
right.
News, of course. Check out Chris's great work.
Yeah.
Chris Mitchell, God bless you, my friend.
All right.
Shalom in Jerusalem.
It's good.
And until next time, we'll be here all week filming,
Yeah.
so stay tuned right here on the Watchman Newscast on YouTube. Until tomorrow, never
Hold your peace.
Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. If you enjoyed this episode and want to see more, make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, click subscribe, and tap the bell icon to turn on notifications for new Watchman Newscast episodes every weekday.